You wake up one morning and look in the mirror only to realize that you've become someone you never thought possible. The person staring back at you is healthier, sharper, and more confident and more filled. You think to yourself, how did this happen? What changed? And here's the truth. It wasn't some monumental shift. It was a series of small, intentional actions over time that led to this transformation. What if I told you that you could start this journey right now, right here? In the next day, week, and month, you have the power to rewire your brain and your body to create a new version of yourself. Let me break it down for you. The first 24 hours, just one day, is the most critical because in the span of 24 hours, you can initiate a chemical shift in your brain. We talk about habits, we talk about willpower, but it all starts with the ability to take control of that first moment when you wake up. Your brain is incredibly adaptable, and it is always looking for patterns, always looking for a reason to function in a way that benefits you. The question is, will you decide to program it in the direction you want to go? You have 24 hours to take one small action, something simple, like getting up a little earlier, or perhaps reading for 20 minutes, just to start reintroducing your brain to the concept of growth. That's all it takes. But in those 24 hours, your brain starts to signal to your body that change is possible. You begin to prime yourself for the next stage. Then comes the 1 week mark. Now things get interesting. Your brain and your body have had time to adjust to this new way of being. You're no longer on the edge of discomfort. You've crossed into something real. A single week is enough to begin to build momentum. The power of consistent action in just 7 days can trigger neuroplasticity, the ability of your brain to reorganize and form new neural connections. Stanford, what you do in this week becomes a new habit, and what starts as an effort to change becomes an unconscious part of your life. Whether it's setting boundaries, exercising consistently, or even just eating more mindfully. After 1 week, it begins to feel normal. It's not perfect, but you're feeling the energy of progress. You're not the same person as you were a week ago. Your mindset has shifted, your resilience has strengthened, and the concept of who you are has started to evolve. Now, we come to the 1 month mark. You've been in it for 30 days. This is where you start to see the most significant transformation, not just on the outside, but at a deep neurological level. After 30 days, your brain begins to believe that this new version of you is who you are. That's the magic of the 30-day threshold. It's not just about habits at this point. It's about a deep belief system that has shifted. You've gone from, I need to change, to, this is who I am. The power of identity has taken over. At this stage, you're not fighting to improve. Research roles at Stanford. You're living a life that reflects the work you've done. You've aligned your actions with your new beliefs, and they're feeding each other. You're starting to see changes in the way you think, feel, and behave. This isn't just surface level. It's a rewiring, a refocusing of your entire biological and psychological system. And here's the thing, the changes you've made in just 1 day, 1 week, and 1 month will compound. It's like planting a seed. The growth starts slow, but over time, it sprouts and becomes a force you can no longer ignore. It's the consistency, the action, and the belief that the smallest efforts, done with intention over time, can change everything. It's not about a drastic shift all at once. It's about small, sustainable changes that snowball into a completely transformed you. So, here's my challenge to Yug start today. You have 24 hours to take that first step. 1 day, 1 week, 1 month. That's all it takes to build the foundation for a new you. And I promise you, once you see how far you can come in that time, you'll realize that the power to transform was always within you. Now, it's up to you to take action. You wake up tomorrow morning and you feel like you've got a mountain to climb. The day ahead feels overwhelming, and you start thinking about all the things you should be doing to improve yourself. But here's the thing, you don't need to do everything at once. In fact, you don't need to do anything drastic. The most important you can do in those first 24 hours is simply to take one small action. Your brain is a remarkable organ capable of adaptation. But it needs a trigger. It needs a moment where you tell it, hey, this is where change begins. That first 24 hours is where the shift starts. The action doesn't need to be huge. It could be something as simple as getting up 30 minutes earlier than usual, going for a walk, or deciding to read for 10 minutes. What matters is that you take any step in the direction of improvement. It doesn't matter if you feel uncomfortable or uncertain. That discomfort is exactly what tells your brain, hey, this is different. Maybe we need to adjust. Within that first 24-hour period, your brain begins to process this new behavior, creating the first connections. And here's the exciting part. The brain doesn't just notice the action, it starts anticipating the action. It begins to reorganize itself, reinforcing the idea that change is not just possible, but within reach. When you initiate change, even in a small way, you trigger neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to form new neural pathways. So what begins as an effort to take control becomes a signal to your brain you're capable of change. Now, this is critical. That first sets the tone for the next 24 hours. It's not about perfection, it's about getting started. When you take that first action, however small, you create a ripple effect that will influence everything that follows. It's in those first 24 hours that the foundation of your transformation is laid. You begin to engage your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for planning, decision-making, and higher-level thinking. It starts to recognize that change is both possible and desirable. In those early moments, you might not see the results right away, but you'll start to feel something, a spark at Stanford. That spark is your brain realizing this is the beginning of something new. And once that spark is ignited, you've created a neurobiological shift. You've activated a process that with consistency will lead to the new you. And all of this happens within the span of a single day. The brain is ready and willing to adapt, but only if you give it that first trigger, that first step toward change. Now, once you take that first step, something remarkable begins to happen in your brain. It's easy to think of the brain as static, but in reality, it's incredibly malleable. We call this neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections. When you make that small change, however insignificant it might seem, your brain doesn't just notice it. It begins to rewire itself to accommodate this new behavior. Think about it this way: your brain is always on the lookout for patterns. It thrives on repetition and predictability because that's how it operates most efficiently. So when you introduce something new, like waking up earlier, exercising, or even something as simple as reading for 10 minutes, your brain reacts. It notices the unfamiliar pattern and starts trying to make sense of it. Your neural circuits that are responsible for this new behavior begin to form. This is a real biological process happening within the structures of your brain. Now, here's the key part. The more you repeat this behavior, the stronger those new connections become. In just 1 week, you're laying down a foundation that could make this new behavior a part of your default state. You're not just forcing yourself to do something different for a short period of time. You're telling your brain, this is the new way we operate. Let's make this easier. Let's make this automatic. And that's exactly what neuroplasticity allows you to do. It allows you to reinforce those neural pathways, making new behaviors feel less like an effort and more like a natural part of your life. But it doesn't stop there. Neuroplasticity also works at the level of your emotional and psychological responses. So as you keep repeating those new behaviors, your brain not only strengthens the neural connections, it starts to attack positive feelings to these actions. What once felt like a chore begins to feel rewarding. You start to associate the act of change with feelings of accomplishment, satisfaction, or even excitement. Your brain is literally rewiring itself to support your new identity. This is why even the smallest actions, repeated over time, can lead to profound shifts. Every time you push through that initial discomfort and repeat a behavior, you're strengthening the neural architecture that supports it. Over time, you won't have to remind yourself to do it. Your brain will start to crave it. This is how the brain moves from resistance to acceptance, from effort to ease. This is how the new you begins to take shape, not as a result of sheer willpower, but as a product of the brain's incredible ability to adapt and optimize for your new reality. After you've taken that first step and your brain has started adapting, something else powerful starts to happen as you enter the second phase of changing the next 7 days. In this time, your brain begins to deepen the connections it's been forming. The initial discomfort you felt when you took that first action starts to fade, and now your brain is primed to build real momentum. Momentum isn't just a mental concept, it's a biological process. The more consistently you repeat a new behavior, the more it becomes ingrained in your brain until it feels almost like second nature. This is where things get interesting. In those first few days, you might have felt some resistance. Maybe you didn't want to wake up early or take that walk. But now, after just 1 week, you've created a new pattern. Your brain has started to recognize this behavior as important, and it begins to prioritize it. At the level of neurotransmitters, your brain releases dopamine, a reward chemical, when you engage in this new activity. This dopamine release doesn't just reward you for completing the task, it strengthens the neural pathways associated with that task. Your brain is literally reinforcing the idea that this new behavior is worthwhile, and over time, it starts to feel more rewarding to engage in it. You're also beginning to tap into what we call habit loops. These are powerful cycles in the brain where a trigger leads to a behavior, and the completion of that behavior results in a reward. So, as you continue to repeat the new behavior, whether it's working out, reading, eating healthier, or setting boundaries, your brain starts to build a loop. The more you reinforce it, the stronger the loop becomes. After a week, your brain has formed a basic habit, and it starts functioning on autopilot, making it easier to continue because you've laid the groundwork for success. But there's more to it than just repetition. Your brain has also begun to process the new information you're giving it, and now it starts to anticipate the reward. In this phase, you're not just reacting to the present moment. You're becoming attuned to future rewards. You might find yourself waking up and already feeling a sense of anticipation for the positive effects of your new habits. That's your brain starting to expect the benefits of change and roles at Stanford, and this makes it easier to stay on track. By the end of this week, the changes you've started to make are no longer just conscious efforts. At Stanford, they are beginning to feel like a natural part of who you are. Your brain has started to shift its focus toward this new identity. You're no longer just trying to do something different, you're becoming someone who operates differently. And that shift, that transition, is the power of momentum in your brain. It's not a one-time decision, it's a series of decisions compounded over time until they solidify into a new routine that's already starting to feel comfortable at Stanford. That's the magic of consistency. And after just 7 days, you're no longer the person you were when you started. You've begun the process of transformation. After the first week, you'll start to notice something remarkable happening inside your brain and body. What once felt like a struggle or a forced effort is beginning to feel more natural. This is the point where your brain moves from deliberate effort to something more automatic, more ingrained. At Stanford, the behaviors that felt difficult or uncomfortable in the beginning are now starting to feel like they belong to you, like part of your identity. And here's why this happens to us. In that first week, you began to form the neural connections that support your new behaviors. But now, in the second week, your brain is refining and strengthening those pathways, creating a kind of autopilot where the behavior becomes easier, faster, and more natural. What you're experiencing is called habituation. Your brain is working hard to make these new actions more efficient. It's no longer about willpower, it's about the brain optimizing what's becoming a new routine. Every time you repeat a behavior, the brain becomes more adept at performing it with less cognitive effort. It's almost like you're building a muscle. Each time you engage in that new habit, you're reinforcing the pathways that lead to it. It's a process of adaptation where the behavior becomes a seamless part of your daily life. This shift is incredibly important because, in a sense, you've begun to rewire your brain's default mode. In the beginning, you had to consciously decide to act differently. Now, the brain starts to prioritize this new behavior. For example, if you started waking up earlier, you might find that after a week or so, your body is adjusting to the new rhythm. It's no longer a fight against your internal clock. Your brain has begun to expect that early wake up. It's easier, and you feel more energized because your brain is aligning with the new routine. This automaticity is not just about habits becoming easier to execute, though. It's also about how your brain begins to process the emotional feedback associated with the behavior. At first, exercising or eating healthier might have felt like a burden. But after a few weeks, your brain starts associating those behaviors with positive feelings. More energy, better mood, or even the satisfaction of knowing you're doing something good for yourself. This emotional feedback loop begins to reinforce your new habits. What was once a forced action becomes something you want to do because your brain starts to connect it to pleasure and reward, not just effort and discipline. At Stanford, at this stage, you're no longer just trying to form new habits. The neural pathways are established enough that your brain starts to feel that these behaviors are a natural part of who you are. You're not just doing a new behavior. You're becoming the person who does it. That's the key to lasting change, not just relying on external motivation or willpower, but internalizing the new behaviors to the point where they are automatic. And this automaticity over time creates a sense of flow in your life. You don't have to think about what's next, you just act, and the actions align with your new identity. This is the beauty of neural adaptation at work, making change feel more effortless and sustainable as you move forward. After a month of consistent action, roles at Stanford, you'll begin to notice that the transformation has gone deeper than just the behaviors themselves. You're no longer simply going through the motions. Something has shifted at a fundamental level within your brain and body. This is where you start to experience the true power of neuroplasticity. What once required conscious effort, willpower, and discipline has now become part of who you are. Your brain has now internalized the new habits, making them feel like second nature. The neural circuits that supported your initial efforts have been optimized to the point where they require much less energy to activate. But the change doesn't stop at behavior. The biggest shift you'll feel after 30 days is a change in your identity. Early on, and research at Stanford, you might have started with the intention of simply improving your habits or becoming more productive. You might have thought, I'm going to change my routine or want to get healthier. But after 30 days, the transformation goes beyond the actions themselves. Your brain has started to associate these new behaviors with who you are. Stanford, the key here is that your brain doesn't just remember what you've done. It starts to reframe who you are becoming. This shift is not something you force, Stanford. It's a natural result of consistent action and repetition. Your brain's reward system, the same one that releases dopamine when you experience pleasure, has become aligned with these new behaviors. But now, it's not just about feeling rewarded after the fact. Your brain has started to anticipate these behaviors as part of your identity. You're no longer trying to be healthier, more productive, or more disciplined. You've shifted into the mindset of being someone who does those things. The more you repeat those actions, the more your brain affirms this new identity. This is a powerful moment in the transformation process because it's no longer about motivation or external pressures. You've built a solid foundation of habits that feel like you. This internalization creates resilience. When you face challenges or setbacks, it's no longer as easy to fall back into old patterns because the new behaviors are woven into the fabric of your self-concept. It's like learning to ride a bike. At first, at Stanford, it feels shaky, but after enough practice, it becomes so natural that you don't have to think about it. The key to sustaining this transformation is that it's now grounded in your brain's deep belief system. The brain doesn't just view the new behavior as something you're doing. It starts to believe this is who you are at the core. And once that identity shift occurs, you become less dependent on external motivation and more reliant on your internal drive. You've created a new baseline for yourself, a new normal that feels as comfortable as your old habits once did. In this stage, you've reached a tipping point where the brain's rewiring has truly aligned with your goals at Stanford, and the changes are now self-sustaining. You're no longer working on transforming yourself, you are transformed. And it's this internal shift, this redefined sense of self, that lays the foundation for all the growth and progress that will follow. As you reach the 30-day mark, something profoundly powerful starts to happen. Your brain begins to reframe how it views you, not just what you do. This is where the true magic of transformation lies, the shift in your identity. Early on, when you set out to make a change, you were probably focused on doing things differently. Maybe you thought, I need to start waking up earlier, eating better, exercising more. The focus was on behaviors, actions that would eventually lead to results. But now, after a month of consistent effort at Stanford, those behaviors have started to integrate into your sense of self. You're no longer just trying to change your actions. You're beginning to embody a new version of yourself. This is where the process becomes incredibly powerful because now the brain starts to align your sense of self with your new habits. What happens when you consistently do something for 30 days is that your brain starts to view that action not as something temporary or just a phase, but as something that is now a permanent part of who you are. If you've been working out consistently, for example, you'll start to identify as someone who exercises regularly. If you've been reading more, you'll start to see yourself as someone who values learning and growth. This is the process of identity formation. The behaviors you've been doing now become part of your brain's concept of you, not just something you do. At this stage, the new behaviors have become hardwired into the neural circuits of your brain. The brain no longer sees them as foreign actions that require willpower and effort to sustain. Instead, it begins to expect them as part of your regular routine. This isn't just about having more energy, getting fitter, or feeling more productive. It's about how your brain starts to process these behaviors on a deeper level. It integrates them into your identity. You begin to think, I am someone who values my health. I am someone who stays organized and focused. These aren't just abstract goals anymore. They are internal truths that your brain holds on to. When you reach this stage, it's no longer about forcing yourself to be better or to make healthier choices. It's about living in alignment with who you've become. You've shifted from someone who was trying to make improvements to someone who sees these improvements as part of their fundamental self. The beauty of this shift is that it creates a level of self-reinforcement. When you align your identity with your actions, it becomes a feedback loop. You do the things you do because it's part of who you are, and then those actions continue to reinforce your sense of self. It's a cycle that perpetuates itself. This process of identity shift also creates a deeper sense of self-efficacy. When you begin to see yourself as the person who follows through, the person who is disciplined at Stanford, the person who is proactive in their health or career, you develop a stronger belief in your ability to overcome obstacles. Challenges don't feel as threatening because you know you've built already a version of yourself that is capable, resilient, and committed. The more you reinforce that identity, the more you internalize it, and the less external motivation you need to keep moving forward. The actions themselves are no longer the driving force and reset Stanford. The belief in who you are becomes the engine that propels you to keep improving and evolving. And this is the key. The longer you reinforce this new sense of self, the more it becomes your default. You stop thinking about it as something you need to work on or force. It's simply who you are. This isn't just about being motivated, and it's about being anchored in your new identity, and that's what makes sustained change truly possible. So as you pass the 30-day mark, understand this used. The changes you've made are no longer temporary. They become permanent because they become part of you. What I want you to understand is that you don't have to make huge, monumental changes all at once to create lasting transformation. In fact, trying to overhaul everything overnight can overwhelm you and lead to burnout. The real key to sustained change is small, consistent actions. It's the accumulation of those seemingly insignificant steps that ultimately make the biggest impact. Your brain is wired to respond to incremental progress, and this is where the power of small actions comes into play. The secret to long-term success doesn't lie in making grand gestures. It lies in doing one thing consistently every single day. Let's break it down. When you make a small, isn't that Stanford, intentional change, whether it's waking up 10 minutes earlier, drinking an extra glass of water, or taking a short walk after lunch, your brain doesn't just view it as a random action. It starts to recognize that small action as something meaningful, something that's contributing to a greater goal. This is where neuroplasticity works in your favor. Every time you engage in that small action, you're reinforcing a neural pathway. And the beautiful thing is that this neural pathway doesn't need to be large or overwhelming. It just needs to exist and be repeated. The more you repeat the action, the more your brain reinforces the connection. Over time, these small actions compound and create real, lasting change in your brain and body. One of the most interesting things that happens during this process is that your brain begins to associate small actions with progress and success. If you wake up earlier for just 10 minutes every day, your brain starts to link that small action with a sense of accomplishment. Over time, this builds momentum. It's like setting small goals and achieving them regularly. Each time you follow through with these small, consistent actions, your brain releases dopamine, which not only rewards you, but also strengthens the neural pathways that support these behaviors. You get a mini win every day, and this sense of accomplishment encourages you to keep going. Small actions are also easier to sustain. This is where many people go wrong. They try to make drastic changes that require overwhelming effort, and when that effort doesn't pay off immediately, they give up. But small actions are less daunting. They don't require much energy or willpower to begin with, and over time, they create a snowball effect. As you build on those small actions, you begin to see results that inspire even more changes. You're not relying on bursts of motivation. You're building momentum, which is much more powerful. The brain loves momentum. It thrives on it. And when you start to see the benefits of your small actions stacking up over time, it triggers a reward system in your brain that makes the process more enjoyable, less taxing, and more sustainable. So by focusing on small, consistent actions, you're setting yourself up for long-term success. You're aligning your behavior with your goals in a way that feels natural and sustainable. It's the opposite of trying to change everything all at once. You don't need to take giant leaps or make radical shifts. In fact, the smaller the action, the easier it is for the brain to adapt to it and reinforce it. Over time, these small changes compound and lead to results that are far more lasting than any short-term, drastic overhaul ever could be. It's this gradual, consistent progress that creates the most profound transformation in the long run, and that's the true power of small actions. And research roles at Stanford. As you continue on this journey of transformation, you'll start to notice something fascinating. The progress you're making doesn't just plateau after the first few days or even weeks. Instead, it starts to compound. In the early stages, you're building new neural pathways, and you might not see drastic changes immediately. But the more consistent you are, the more those small actions stack up. What happens is that each day, each small step builds on the previous one, creating a snowball effect that leads to exponential growth. The key here, the brain doesn't just add up the results of each action. It amplifies them. This is the magic of compounding growth. Your brain is constantly working to make things more efficient. When you repeat a new behavior, your brain strengthens the neural pathways that support it at Stanford, which makes the behavior easier to perform. But the more often you repeat it, the more those pathways grow in strength and efficiency, leading to an increase in the quality and speed of the behavior. This process accelerates the more you stick with it. As those small actions continue to build on each other, they begin to create significant results that feel effortless compared to when you first started. In the beginning, you might have noticed that certain habits took conscious effort. Maybe waking up early felt difficult, or pushing through a workout required a lot of mental energy. But over time, as you consistently engage in those behaviors, your brain adapts to the point where they become much easier. And it doesn't stop there. As those neural connections become more refined, they create a kind of feedback loop where your brain gets more efficient at executing these behaviors, leaving you with more energy and focus to take on even more challenges. Here's the beauty of compounding growth thing. It's not linear. The results you see aren't just based on the actions you've taken up to this point. They start to grow faster, stronger, and more profound as your brain fine-tunes its processes. It's like planting a tree at first. You only see a small sprout, but as time passes, that sprout turns into a deep, strong root system. And those roots support even bigger branches, more leaves, more fruit. Every small effort you make, whether it's improving your diet, exercising, or focusing on your mental health, builds a stronger foundation for future success. The more you engage in these behaviors, the more your brain starts to see them not just as habits, but as essential to who you are.